Well, hey guys, welcome to our Thursday stream. Far away from the Duval Street craziness tonight, aren't we?
Welcome to Key West, everybody. Fantasy Fest is going on just a few blocks away. But we thought we'd take a night and do something a little different and get away from the noise and the craziness for this evening. And show you a different part of Key West. You're getting this close to Halloween. We find ourselves in the Key West Cemetery, one of the greatest cemeteries in the world. A lot of interesting people here, coming from all different places. So this is the Key West Cemetery, founded in 1847, this one, because the original cemetery was right next to the water, right on Higgs Beach. And it got washed away kind of in a hurricane, got destroyed, and I guess quite a bit washed away, which I'm sure is horrific, in 1846. So they moved the cemetery here in 1847, and they moved this, what we're looking at, this gravestone here, Captain James Johnson, is the oldest in this cemetery. He was in the original cemetery at Higgs Beach.
He moved.
And he was moved here in 1847 when they started this cemetery. He was born in, looks like Norfolk, Virginia. And he died 60 years old in 1829. Now keep in mind, Key West only became really populated by the U.S. in 1822. So he was here in the early days. And
so that's the oldest one in the cemetery,
that's
right?
the oldest in this cemetery.
Yes. So, and he moved. Because the ones around, that one is 1865.
Yeah, I don't know why he's in this specific location. I mean, this one's very old too. This is a guy from Scotland. But he only died in 1867, so... And there's a big mix. What's strange kind of about this cemetery is you've got... Everybody is mixed in. There's no old part. I mean, there's new ones right next to old ones. So I don't know how it was ever thought out or plotted itself. I don't know how it ended up this way, but this is the way it is.
Well, actually, this seems to be pretty much right in the middle of it, no? Wouldn't that be like almost the center point of the whole cemetery?
This is kind of a center point, but it's
It
still
is,
a big
huh?
mix.
A little bit, yeah.
So here at the Key West Cemetery, I know you guys have noticed before, the bodies aren't buried very deep because the island's pretty much sea level. I mean, this is probably only about 8-10 foot above sea level, so the water table's very high. So it's kind of like New Orleans, where they have to be buried in mausoleums or not very deep. So there's 75,000 people buried here, which is
Only 75?
more than 3 times the population of Key West. So we've got a lot more dead here than we do alive. There's a Masonic. These might all be Masonics members. That might be the reason. Masons. And here at the cemetery, we find that there's all different kinds. We've got rich, we've got poor, we've got lots of Cubans, African Americans, people from all over. There's a Jewish section, there's a Catholic section, all kinds, and all mixed in except for those Catholic and Jewish sections.
So we're currently facing east, right? And then
Yes.
the Jewish section would be over to the right, and the
Yeah.
Catholic is over to the left. And I had read on from a different source that there were like 100,000 people here. I think maybe they don't know how many they moved at some point. I read 100,000 and kind of thought that was
the marker coming in says 75.
75. The official count.
So how you guys doing? I actually see Greggy wants us to check out the Otto plot. Well, Greggy, it's funny you actually asked that because that was where we were headed. So this is the Otto family plot. Dr. Joseph Otto was laid to rest here 1885, 59 years old. Now on the back, it has where he was born. If you want to check that out. His wife is right next to him there. So the Otto family, he was born in Königsberg, Prussia, July 10th, 1826. Of course, Prussia is now what, modern day Austria, part of Germany perhaps.
I'm not really sure where Königsberg is. I think it is what used to be Eastern Germany.
Yeah.
Sorry, I only know that by certain foods from that area. Königsberger Klops.
Or what?
One of my dad's favorite dishes is Königsberger. It's basically giant meatballs in a white sauce with capers in it.
Okay.
It's from that area. I mean, if that's the same one, because sometimes the cities would have the same names, one in Eastern Germany, one in Western,
So we've got the Ottos here. Dr. Joseph, who was born in Prussia, and his wife next to him, and Joseph Otto Jr., also a doctor it seems. They were all professionals, I think, here. And another son, I believe it was, Julius here, with Venetia, his wife. And I noticed they lost a son.
Oh, there's a, yeah.
Very early. Born July, died November. That's Julius and Venetia's child. I don't know whose child that was.
EO and
Age 10 months. Locke.
Doesn't have the Otto name on it.
Doesn't have the Otto name on it, but it's in the Otto plot. And some other Ottos around here. Here's a surgeon. And I'm guessing his wife, Marjorie, Thomas and Marjorie. The Otto family plot here might be most famous for some of these unusual members here they got here. These three small graves. These are graves for Yorkshire Terriers for their 3 dogs.
We have little boy.
Little boy Otto. And Sonny.
They were all Yorkshire Terriers?
They were all terriers. But they were only in the 40s and the 50s, 60s. The Ottos also buried their pet deer.
Oh. Elfina.
They had a key deer named Elfina.
I didn't realize they. It was 15 years old. I didn't realize they were grown that old. Oh, a little key deer.
The Otto family were the ones who built the artist house.
Oh.
So the Otto family lived in the artist house. They built it and were the original owners.
So wait, and who had Robert then? Whose doll was Robert?
That's a good question. I actually didn't get that far into my research.
I mean, it's one of the Ottos. I remember the name.
It was an
but
Otto?
I don't know which of the kids had Robert.
So that is the Otto family plot.
Love the little gate.
It's nice. Some palm trees. A lignum vitae tree. This is an endangered tree here in the Keys, and they're still pretty rare. They live a very long time, and they grow very slowly, and they have these beautiful flowers that come out, not this time of year, obviously, and attract butterflies and bees all over them. They probably planted that a long time ago. Eugene Otto was the kid who had Robert. Okay, I hadn't made that connection actually.
So when they built the house, did they build that room specifically for Robert the doll?
For Robert.
Or were they trying to get him to stay away, further away?
Oh, somebody decorated that for Halloween?
Yep. That's cool. Mother and grandmother.
Robert buried there. No, better not bury Robert.
No, do not bury Robert. Robert is at the...
That would upset Robert.
Robert would be very upset. Robert is here in Key West, but he's on the other side of the island. At the East Martello Tower.
Alright, we've got some jokers buried here in the Key West Cemetery. Some people who like to get a laugh, even in death. So, B.P. Pearl Roberts was a hypochondriac and she told you she was sick. Now also, Gloria Russell up here wants you to know she's just resting her eyes. And then here's the Jewish cemetery right next to us. Takes up this corner of the cemetery.
But that whole thing looks kind of spooky.
Yeah.
The joking family, they got like a, I mean, it looks like if you would have to build a film prop of like a haunted place, that would pretty much be it. They did it. Yeah, they totally did it.
It's interesting too. This is like pipe. They built this fence out of. It's a nice little quiet spot right here in this corner, though. I don't know who that family is, who that plot is for.
Oh yeah.
It's a nice spot. Okay, so those are the funny ones. Now I gotta tell you about a serious one now. Manuel Cabeza. Manuel was Cuban, I believe, and he fought for the U.S. in World War I. And then he came here to Key West afterwards, and he was having a relationship with a mixed race woman here in Key West, and the local Ku Klux Klan in the area didn't care much for that, so they tarred and feathered him. This was in 1921. He figured out who it was, or knew who it was, and decided to get revenge. He killed one of them. On Christmas Eve, 1921, he killed one of them. Christmas Day, the others all got together, all the Ku Klux Klan got together, broke into the jail, took Manuel out, hung him, and shot him in retaliation. And I don't remember the rest, but he was just recently put to rest here only a few years ago. And given a military burial for his part in World War I. Tragic story. So that is Manuel's resting place. Now this is where I get lost. In the cemetery. You'll weave your way through here.
Okay, guys, I have to show. I haven't walked like normally when we ride through here on a bike. So this is this kind of weird grass that when you step on it, you kind of like sink in. I don't know how to describe it. Like, it feels like there's a pocket of air underneath. It's kind of surprising because it just looks the same as all the rest. You just step on it and.
So, who is the most famous bar owner ever from Key West? It's not Captain Tony. Though, it could be, who knows? It's debatable, but Tony's not here. But Sloppy Joe Russell is. So I don't know all of Joe Russell's story, but he was a bar owner here in Key West, of course. He owned what is now Captain Tony's from 33 to 37, where Hemingway spent a lot of his time. And of course, the famous story of them, the rent being raised by $1, and then they all gathered up their stools and moved down the street to the current Sloppy Joe's location. And he only lived another 4 years. But this is where Joseph Russell is buried, and his wife, Lulu. Her name's down there. It's kind of cramped down there. Kind of hard to see. They're squeezed in a little bit right here. There is the final resting place of Sloppy Joe Russell.
This is interesting. He doesn't have a death date. I'm not really sure if that means he's here or not. Or if, I don't know. Here's a grave that doesn't have a date, but I mean, 1869 to 19. Something.
Interesting.
Maybe it's one of the vampire stories.
I saw Richard said zoysia grass. That's actually, I just bought zoysia grass to put in our backyard.
Oh, the so are those air bubbles underneath?
I think it's just how it grows. There's ground underneath. It just grows super thick like that. I always said this cemetery has the nicest grass on the entire island. I'm hoping I can grow some nice stuff like that. Yeah, bad boy. I gave up on the Irish moss. Okay? It didn't work. It died.
Don't go there. Don't go there. About the grass. Bad boy. Don't mention it.
So I'm doing zoysia grass next. it actually grows in this climate, obviously. Planoifolia, something like that. It's also called Korean zoysia. Alright, so Manuel and Joseph are on the south side of the cemetery. Now we gotta move a little distance here. Go see a few other people. Should we talk about the count?
Yes, I was about to mention Elena. Elena.
Okay, so you guys know the story? Anybody heard the story of Count von Cosel here in Key West? Alright, let me try and remember this and keep it as clean as possible. He fell in love with a young woman, younger than him.
He was a self-proclaimed, right?
Self-proclaimed count.
Yes.
He wasn't actually a count. This was 1931. He fell in love with her. I forget what she died of. She died in 31, 22 years old. He was in love with her. She was probably buried here.
Yep.
In a mausoleum or whatever. And he came to visit her every day. He had the mausoleum built for her. He paid for it.
And I think it was over there because he got one of those houses in order to, when he
be
wanted
close?
to, well, when he tried to get her.
Well, he had
night.
a telephone installed in her mausoleum so he could call her.
Yeah.
And for 2 years he apparently came here every day to see her. And then he decided, I guess, that he wanted to be closer to her. I don't know what made him decide to resurrect her body and take it to, I think it was behind a hospital that he worked at. There was an empty fuselage from a plane. He took her and stored her there so he could spend more time with her. And then he reconstructed her body. At some point he had to move her from this area too, because they were going to get rid of this old plane.
Yeah.
So he took her home to his house, to a different house. His house was on Flagler, I know of it, when he took her home. So he took her home and reconstructed her body with wire and plaster. Reconstructed every part of her body, apparently.
Yes.
Even the naughty bits. So he could do his thing. And he was interrupted by her sister, apparently. Figured out what was going on. She came to his house. He actually apparently let her in.
Mm-hmm. To
And
meet
said,
her.
And said, yes, here's your sister.
Yeah.
She was well decomposed by that time. And, of course, the authorities got involved.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything?
Well, he kind of made her, like, he managed to preserve her somewhat.
He mummified her.
He mummified her, so, and he was convinced she was replying to him. So
Right.
he pretended she told him to come and get her from the cemetery and take her home, and it's a really interesting book.
Yeah, there's a book.
Oh yeah, there is.
So anyway, this all went on. He was arrested and charged for it, but there was some sort of statute of limitations, so he was set free. And he moved to Zephyrillus, Florida, in the 50s, like 52 or something like that, and her tomb was destroyed on the day he left. Surprisingly, right? I mean,
Yeah, the locals weren't too. Yeah, I think they. But she is here. It's just that she's in an unmarked
they
tomb.
reburied her here, but they didn't mark where she was because they were worried that the Count would come back and get her.
Again. So they didn't really know what to do with him because technically he didn't. I mean, he wasn't the one who killed her.
I said to Kim, they didn't have these. They didn't prepare for. There was no law. There was no law for what this man did. There was nothing to hold him because nobody predicted this ridiculousness. So they couldn't hold him. He didn't technically break any. His statute of limitations ran out because they didn't know he was going to keep a dead body that long.
But he did rent one of the houses close to the cemetery, so at night that he could come into the cemetery, and that's how he got her body. He kind of moved her to that house first, and then to the fuselage, and it was like his secret way into the cemetery at night.
So one of the creepiest, craziest stories of Key West.
Yeah, if anybody needs a good Halloween read.
And that happened in the 30s. 31, she died. 33, he took her out of the cemetery. I don't know when the almost trial would have happened or anything like that. But a crazy story. Anyway, let's get back to our inhabitants here. The Lowe family. The Lowe family were Confederate sympathizers. During the Civil War, they flew a Confederate flag, the Stars and Bars, while the Union Army marched through town. And Alfred here ran away and joined the Confederate Army and fought against the Union. And he was honored for it. And he died here in 1921. Honored by the Confederacy. And that's the Lowe family plot. They're all here. Captain Francis Watlington, who was an old wrecker. You guys probably know that Key West made its money from salvaging wrecks that hit our reef, and it was very profitable. He was a wrecker from way back. His family lived in the oldest house, famous, that's on Duval, that you can go visit, that's still there. Also a Mason.
Just double checking so we don't get locked in here.
Yeah, don't lose track. Get through here. Found this slightly interesting. Gabriel Soler, born 1918, died 1985. He was a carpenter and a guitar player.
Wow, that is kind of difficult to read.
Yeah, that is difficult.
He even had a
a
little logo tile.
And then we've got the Currys. Obviously the wealthy family from way back in the day here in Key West, a very old wealthy family here in Key West. Built the Curry Mansion, of course.
On a side note, the Curry mentioned one of the haunted places on the island, amongst many.
nice under the Ponciana trees. Here lies William Von Pfister. Another Key West family from back in the day. Von Pfister was a property owner and everything like that, but he was also a grocer. He had a grocery store at Southard and Whitehead, which is now the Green Parrot. I didn't know that until today. The Green Parrot was originally a grocery store throughout the 1800s.
So when the sign says 1890, that is when it actually turned into a bar.
That was when it was changed to a bar.
So the building itself is older.
Because he died in 1885. You can barely see that.
No, that's not me.
So William died in 1885, and then apparently the family, I don't know, didn't want to run the grocery store or whatever, and the Green Parrot bought it. That doesn't help.
Nope.
But I did not know that little bit of information myself.
What I'm surprised is that the building is older than 1890 in that case.
Right, and it's still there.
Because I thought they built it around the same time they built the courthouse next door.
This is an interesting one I found too. Self-proclaimed General Abe Slayer. 1862 to 1939. He was apparently a little person. He was about 4 feet tall, about 50 pounds, something like that. But he demanded he be buried in a full-size grave. Said he was a shoe salesman for a good shoe company. And he was what did he say he was? He walked around with like a cane and a hat and everything, and he was well-spoken. He was a good speaker, probably a good salesman. Smallest shoe salesman with the biggest company or something like that. Something like that.
That's interesting. They have like a bike rack in the middle of the...
True.
Huh.
This is a popular spot in the cemetery, I think, because a lot of the older ones are from the old cemetery are around this area.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the older families are around this area, so maybe they thought it needed a bike rack. I don't know.
Pecan, is this that the lane is named after?
There's a few there's pecans all over here.
Yeah, I thought there are.
The older one is over there. Yeah, there's the pecan lane. There's a pecan house that they lived in too. All around Eaton, that same area of Eaton Street.
Yeah.
Where the lane is. I think the pecan house is like a block from there or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain names around here that pop up a lot, like Curry, Pecan, Spotswood, the Ottos. Well-to-do Key West families in the 1800s, the early days. So this is the biggest monument, sort of the biggest thing here in our Key West Cemetery, of course. This is a monument to the sinking of the Battleship Maine, the USS Battleship Maine, in 1898, I think, while in Havana Harbor. Of course, the ship was sunk and many, many sailors killed, U.S. sailors, and they're commemorated here. Of course, that led to the Spanish-American War at the time, which, interesting enough, came in by telegraph, the information into Captain Tony's, because Captain Tony's Saloon was a telegraph station at the time. The telegraph station in town. lock us in.
Oh, did they lock the gate?
Closed it early.
Oh yeah, it's only 6.
Yeah,
They are 15 minutes early. We can walk out on the other end. I mean,
Just so you guys know, real quick, before we go, these are the Parsons brothers, died in 1914. I guess they accidentally blew each other up with explosives. Oh, we're not the only ones.
we're not the only ones. We're in good company. They lock the gates. Oh.
Also, I wanted to point out the Griffins. He died in 1907. It was a murder-suicide. We're on the Halloween stuff now.
Yeah.
The murder-suicide of the Griffins. He shot her, and then he drank acid. Very interesting. And so good timing, as that concludes the our tour. We better get out of here.
Do not lock us in.
Hey.
Hey,
Thank you. No
thanks.
You guys have a great night.
You too. Good, we're not going to spend the night in the cemetery.
Just in time.
So guys, we stayed away a little bit from the Fantasy Fest craziness tonight, but we're going to be back tomorrow for our TGIFFF. Thank God it's Fantasy Fest Friday stream. And so sunset is at 6:40 something, so I think we're going to start around 6:30 tomorrow. And then see if we can get a nice sunset on camera and then go and check out Duval Street on a Friday night. What do you think?
That sounds like a
Does
good
that
idea.
sound good? Good. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Hope you enjoyed our little cemetery walk. It was kind of definitely interesting to get off the bike for me and kind of walk in between all the graves. Did I just hear a cat?
Yes.
Ooh, guys, there was a cat. Hey. There's another one. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Gonna leave you with the beautiful sign of Passover Lane right here. See you tomorrow for more Fantasy Fest craziness on Duval Street. Tomorrow evening, 6:30. Take care, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Bye.